Ethan Cole was a man who blended into the background of life. Every day before the sun rose, he would tie his old work boots, take one last sip of lukewarm coffee, and step out of his small rented apartment with his head slightly bowed and his mind already at work. He was a janitor at Crestwood Academy, a school so expensive that parents drove luxury cars just to drop off their children. To them, people like Ethan didn't exist. He was part of the walls, part of the furniture, invisible, unnoticed, and unimportant. But Ethan didn't mind. At least that's what he told himself. He had learned long ago that some people are born to be seen and some are born to serve quietly. Life had not given him many choices. His wife Emma had passed away when their son Noah was just 5. She had been the light of his world, kind, full of laughter, always humming a tune while cooking. When she was gone, the music in his home stopped too. For months, Ethan had struggled just to breathe normally again, but he had to keep going for Noah. His son was his reason to get up every morning, to clean those endless hallways, to mop floors until his knees hurt, and to smile through the tiredness. Ethan worked at the school not just for the paycheck, but for the small comfort that Noah studied there on a scholarship. It gave him a strange kind of pride, even if he had to scrub bathrooms in the same place where his son was learning to dream bigger. Whenever he saw Noah laughing with friends, wearing his clean uniform, Ethan felt that maybe all his sacrifices were worth it. He wanted his boy to have a life completely different from his own. His days followed a simple rhythm. The echo of his mop on the marble floor, the faint chatter of students rushing through the corridors, the sound of piano music coming from the music hall. Those were the background noises of his life. He never complained. When teachers passed by without a greeting, he simply nodded and smiled. When students accidentally spilled drinks or snacks, he cleaned up quietly. And when the day ended, he stayed behind to fix things others had broken. Desks, doorknobs, leaking taps. He didn't talk much, but his hands always worked, his eyes always noticed, and his heart always cared. Sometimes, when the school was empty and silent, Ethan liked to walk into the music room. It was his favorite place. He didn't touch anything, just stood there breathing in the faint smell of old wood and sheet music. The grand piano stood in the center like a sleeping giant. It reminded him of Emma, who used to play lullabies for Noah at night. She had taught him that music could heal pain, that it spoke even when words failed. Those moments in the music room were the only times Ethan allowed himself to dream again. Outside of work, life was simple but not easy. Ethan and Noah lived in a small 2-room apartment on the edge of town. The walls were thin, the furniture second-hand, and the heater worked only when it wanted to. But it was home. Every night they'd have dinner together, usually soup, sometimes noodles if money was tight. Ethan would listen to Noah talk about school, about friends, about math tests he didn't study for. And every time his son laughed, Ethan's heart swelled with quiet pride. He didn't have friends to talk to, but he didn't feel lonely. His world was small, but it was filled with purpose. People might not see him, but he knew who he was. A father, a worker, a man doing his best. Still, sometimes, when he looked out the window at the city lights, he wondered if life had something more to offer. He didn't crave riches or fame, just a small miracle, something that would remind him that good things could still happen to ordinary people. Then one day, that miracle came in the most unexpected way. It began with a sound, a few uncertain piano notes echoing through the empty school halls. Ethan had been mopping the corridor outside the music room when he heard it. The tune was broken, uneven, but there was something about it, a kind of longing, a voice trying to find itself. He stopped what he was doing and listened. His heart stirred in a way it hadn't for years. He peeked inside and saw a young girl sitting at the piano, her small hands trembling over the keys. She wore a blindfold. Her face was calm but focused, her head slightly tilted as if she was trying to see the music through sound alone. Ethan didn't know who she was. Maybe a student from a rich family, maybe someone practicing alone. But in that moment, he saw something pure. It was like looking at hope in its gentlest form. He quietly closed the door, not wanting to disturb her. But the image stayed in his mind all evening. The blindfolded girl, the struggling notes, the courage it took to keep playing. He didn't know it yet, but that small moment was about to change his life forever. Because for the first time in years, Ethan felt something more than duty or fatigue. He felt curiosity, and behind that curiosity, A flicker of purpose, something waiting to be rediscovered inside him, something that had been silent for too long. He went to sleep that night with a feeling he couldn't explain, a mix of warmth and wonder. The quiet janitor had no idea that the melody he'd heard that afternoon would one day bring him face to face with the one person who could change everything, the girl at the piano, and the mother who silently watched from behind the door. Lily Hartman had always lived in a world without sight, but she had learned to see in other ways. She could hear the soft creak of doors before anyone entered, smell the faintest trace of perfume or rain in the air, and sense the mood of a room from the tone of a single breath. The world spoke to her differently, not through colors or shapes, but through rhythm and feeling. She was 12, and though her life seemed wrapped in luxury, she often felt like a ghost in her own home. Her mother, Victoria Hartman, was one of the most powerful women in the city, the CEO of Hartman Enterprises, a company that touched everything from technology to fashion. People admired her brilliance and feared her silence. At every meeting, her voice commanded attention, but at home, that same silence filled the air like cold marble. Victoria loved her daughter deeply, though she didn't know how to show it. Since Lily's birth, things had been complicated. The doctors had said her blindness was permanent. Victoria had felt something inside her harden that day, a mix of pain and guilt she never faced. She poured herself into her work, building empires to avoid the ache of helplessness. She told herself she was working for Lily's future, but deep down, she knew she was running away from the part of motherhood she couldn't fix. Lily, however, was different. Despite her blindness, she had a strong and curious mind. She asked questions about everything: how the rain looked on windows, how the sunset felt, and what people meant when they said colors were warm or cold. Most people at school didn't know how to talk to her. Some treated her gently as if she might break. Others ignored her, too uncomfortable to try. Lily pretended not to care, but loneliness followed her like a shadow she couldn't escape. Her world was made up of sounds: the tapping of shoes on the hallway floor, the whisper of pages turning, the hum of air conditioners, and sometimes the distant melody of a piano being played somewhere in the school. That piano sound always pulled her heart closer. It reminded her of her father, or at least the faint memory she had of him. He used to play simple tunes for her when she was a toddler, his laughter blending with the music. After his death, music disappeared from her life just as color never existed in it. When her mother enrolled her at Crestwood Academy, it was meant to be a fresh start. Victoria believed the best environment could push Lily to greatness. But Lily felt even more lost. The children there came from families that measured worth by wealth. They whispered about her blindness, about her mother's power, about how sad it must be to live like her. But Lily didn't want pity. She wanted connection. One afternoon, during free study hour, she wandered toward the music room. She wasn't supposed to be there alone, but curiosity tugged at her. The door creaked open and the smell of polished wood and sheet paper filled her senses. She traced her fingers along the edge of the piano, feeling its smooth, cool surface. Then hesitantly she pressed one key. The note rang out, soft and uncertain like her own heartbeat. For the first time in a long while, Lily smiled. She pressed another key, then another. It was clumsy, awkward, but something about the sound felt alive. The vibrations traveled through her fingertips, up her arms, into her chest. She didn't know how to play, but she could feel where the notes wanted to go. Unbeknownst to her, someone was standing quietly outside the door. Victoria had come to pick her up early that day and had stopped when she heard the hesitant music. She saw her daughter sitting alone at the piano, head tilted slightly, lips curved into a faint smile, something she hadn't seen in weeks. Her instinct was to go inside, to help, to say something encouraging. But she couldn't. She just stood there frozen, watching this fragile, beautiful moment unfold. It hit her. How little she really knew her daughter's world. She had provided tutors, doctors, and the best equipment money could buy. Yet she had never seen Lily this alive. She realized painfully that she didn't even know what her daughter sounded like when she was happy. But old habits die hard. Rather than step forward, Victoria turned and walked away, her heels clicking softly on the marble floor. That was how she showed care, and from a distance. She convinced herself that Lily didn't need her emotions, just her success. Yet something in her chest felt heavier than usual that day. Back in the music room, Lily continued playing, unaware that anyone had been watching. The melody she made was imperfect but full of feeling. The janitor, Ethan Cole, happened to be sweeping the hallway nearby. When he heard the soft, searching notes, he paused. It wasn't just music. It was someone reaching out. A soul trying to find its way. He peeked through the half-open door and saw her. A small girl with braided hair and a white blindfold, fingers moving carefully over the keys. The sight stirred something deep inside him, a memory of his wife playing piano for their son before bedtime. For a moment, the world around him faded. There was only the music and the girl's quiet determination. Lily didn't know that her simple act of curiosity had caught two hearts that day. One broken and humble, the other guarded and powerful. She just played, letting the music fill the empty spaces inside her. Later that evening, when her mother came to drive her home, Lily asked softly, "Mom, do you think I could learn to play piano for real?" Victoria hesitated. Her schedule was packed, her mind already on the next board meeting. But when she looked at her daughter's hopeful face, she nodded. "We'll see," she said, her tone controlled, distant as always. As they drove away, Victoria glanced at Lily through the rearview mirror, seeing for once not a fragile child, but a spark of something she had long forgotten. Courage. Neither of them knew it yet, but that moment, a blind girl's shy curiosity, a janitor's quiet attention, and a mother's silent observation, was the beginning of a story that would change all their lives forever. That afternoon, the school hallways were almost empty. The sun had begun to dip behind the old brick buildings, painting the corridors with a soft golden glow. Ethan was finishing up his shift, humming quietly as he pushed his cleaning cart toward the music wing. It was his favorite part of the day, the time when the school fell silent and he could think. He moved slowly, enjoying the calm after the rush of noisy students. The smell of chalk, old books, and polished wood filled the air. As he approached the music room, a sound stopped him in his tracks. It wasn't the hum of a vacuum or the clatter of doors closing. It was the gentle, hesitant touch of piano keys. The notes were unsteady, searching as if someone was trying to find their way through darkness. Ethan tilted his head and listened more closely. There was something pure about the sound, fragile but brave. He set his mop aside and peeked into the room. Inside, he saw the same blindfolded girl he had noticed once before, Lily Hartman. She sat straight-backed on the piano bench, her small hands hovering uncertainly over the keys. Every time she hit the wrong note, she would pause, frown slightly, then try again. Her patience amazed him. Most children he knew would have given up after a few mistakes, but she kept going, feeling for the right sound. He hesitated at the door, not wanting to intrude. He could tell she didn't know anyone was there. She was lost in her own world, a world made of sound, not sight. But when she pressed a key too hard and sighed in frustration, he couldn't stop himself from speaking. "You're doing fine," he said softly. Lily froze. "Who's there?" Ethan quickly stepped into the light so she wouldn't be scared. "I'm Ethan," he said gently. "I work here, the janitor. Sorry if I startled you." She tilted her head as if studying his voice. "You were listening?" He smiled. "Only for a little." "You played beautifully." She gave a small laugh, the kind that sounded unsure. "Beautifully?" "I think the piano disagrees," he chuckled. "Maybe. But you've got something special and you listen with your heart. That's what really matters." She turned slightly toward him. "Do you play?" Ethan nodded before realizing she couldn't see him. "A little," he said quickly. "My wife used to play. I picked up a few things from her." "Can you show me?" Lily asked, curiosity brightening her voice. He hesitated. He wasn't supposed to interact too much with students, especially ones like her. But there was something about the way she asked, polite, trusting, that made it impossible to say no. "All right," he said softly, walking over. "Mind if I sit beside you?" She moved over on the bench, making room. "Just tell me what you're doing," she said. He sat down and pressed a few simple keys, C, E, G, forming a soft, warm chord. "Hear that?" he asked. "That's a C major. Happy sound?" "Like sunshine," she smiled. "It does sound happy." "Now try it," he said, guiding her fingers gently to the right keys. "Feel the difference between smooth and flat keys. They'll tell you where you are." Lily followed his instructions, her fingers trembling at first but then growing steady. When she played the same chord, she gasped. "I did it. You did," Ethan said proudly. "See? Music isn't something you have to look at. You just have to feel it." They spent the next few minutes playing small, simple patterns. Ethan taught her how to find middle C by touch, how to count the black keys in 2s and 3s. Each time she succeeded, her smile grew wider. The room, once quiet and lonely, began to feel alive. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt that old warmth return, the feeling he used to get when his wife played and his son listened, clapping after every song. He had thought those days were gone forever, but sitting next to this brave little girl, hearing her laughter echo softly in the room, he felt something stir inside him again. Hope. Unbeknownst to them, they weren't entirely alone. Just outside the doorway, half hidden behind the frame, stood Victoria Hartman. She had come earlier than usual to pick up her daughter. When she saw Ethan sitting beside Lily, guiding her gently, she froze. Her first instinct was anger. How dare a janitor touch her daughter's hand, sit beside her piano? But then something stopped her. She looked closer. Lily was smiling, really smiling, in a way she hadn't in months. The sight hit Victoria like a wave. For years, she had tried to fill her daughter's world with the best tutors, expensive technology, and clinical experts. But none of them had managed to light her up the way this simple man just had. Ethan wasn't using science or strategy. He was using kindness. Victoria's chest tightened. She didn't move or speak, afraid to break the moment. The sound of Lily's laughter, the gentle patience in Ethan's voice. It was like watching sunlight fall on a heart long trapped in shadow. Inside the room, Ethan said softly, "You've got real talent, you know. If you keep practicing, you'll make this piano sing." Lily giggled. "Do pianos sing?" "Only when someone like you plays them." Her laughter filled the air again, and outside the door, Victoria felt something she hadn't felt in years. Tears. They didn't fall, but they burned quietly behind her eyes. Ethan never saw her there. He would go home that evening thinking it was just a small act of kindness, a janitor helping a student for a few minutes. But in that simple act, he had unknowingly opened a door into a child's heart that longed for music, a door into a mother's soul that longed for warmth, and a door into his own life, where a new chapter was quietly beginning. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and Lily's meetings became a quiet routine, one that neither of them planned but both of them looked forward to. Every day after the final bell rang and the echo of students faded down the corridors, Lily would find her way back to the music room. And every day Ethan would already be there, pretending to tidy up though the floors were spotless. He would greet her with his usual warm voice. "You ready for today's lesson, little maestro?" And she'd grin, tilting her head slightly toward his voice. "Only if you promise not to laugh when I mess up." "I never laugh at bravery," he'd reply. Their lessons were simple but magical. Ethan didn't teach like a music instructor. He didn't talk about scales or theory. Instead, he taught her to feel the piano. Music, he said, isn't about perfection, it's about connection. You can't see the notes, but you can feel their story. He guided her through the rhythm of sound, how slow notes could calm a storm, how quick ones could make the heart dance. Lily learned to hear the tiny spaces between tones, to sense joy and sadness in every vibration. The piano became her new language, one she could speak fluently without sight. Ethan would sometimes close his eyes too while she played, just to understand her world better. He realized that in the dark the music sounded different, clearer, fuller, almost alive. Outside the music room, Ethan's life remained as ordinary as ever. He still cleaned classrooms, fixed leaking pipes, and checked off long lists of maintenance requests. But now there was something new in his days, purpose. He began whistling again while he worked. Even Noah noticed. "Dad," his son said one evening, "you're smiling more lately." Ethan shrugged, trying to hide it. "Maybe I'm just tired in a good way." Noah smirked. "Or maybe you found someone who makes your job less boring." Ethan laughed. "Maybe." At school, rumors slowly began to spread among the staff, whispers about the janitor who spent time in the music room. But no one complained because somehow the sound of that little girl's piano filled the hallways with warmth. It was as if her happiness had softened the whole building, yet not everyone approved. The principal, Mr. Kent, was a man obsessed with image. To him, rules were sacred and class divisions were clear. A janitor teaching a CEO's daughter piano? Unacceptable. But he hadn't caught them yet. And until he did, Ethan and Lily's secret stayed safe. Meanwhile, Victoria Hartman continued her quiet habit of observation. She often finished meetings early, telling her driver to wait while she stood outside the music room door. She would listen, not daring to go in. At first, she had tried to convince herself it was curiosity. She simply wanted to know what her daughter was learning. But deep down, it was something else. Every time she heard Lily laugh or Ethan's patient voice guiding her, something fragile began to awaken inside her. She saw how gently Ethan spoke to Lily, never pitying her, never treating her as broken. He made her believe she was capable, powerful even, through simple words and endless patience. Victoria realized how little she had done that herself. She had been so focused on protecting her daughter's future that she had forgotten to nurture her present. One evening, she finally stayed long enough to see them through the glass window. Lily sat at the piano, head tilted toward Ethan, her fingers gliding over the keys. Ethan leaned slightly, nodding with encouragement. "Perfect," he said softly. "You didn't even hesitate that time." Lily giggled. "I can almost feel the music smiling back." Victoria pressed her hand to her chest, surprised by the ache that came with those words. For the first time, she saw what her money could never buy: trust. Her daughter trusted this man completely. That night at home, Victoria found herself sitting in silence long after dinner. Her office phone blinked with missed calls, but she ignored them. She kept replaying the sound of Lily's laughter in her mind. Light, free, unguarded. She poured herself a glass of wine but didn't drink it. Instead, she whispered something she hadn't said in years. "Thank you." The next afternoon, Lily told Ethan about the colors she imagined when she played. "I know I can't see them," she said, "but every note feels like a color. When I play soft, I think it's blue. When I play fast, it's yellow. And when it sounds big, I think it's gold and like the sun." Ethan smiled. "Then you're painting pictures every time you play, Lily. The kind only your heart can see." Their lessons began to grow longer. Sometimes they'd stay until the janitor's lights automatically dimmed for the night. Lily's progress was incredible. Her hearing was so sharp that she could pick out every note Ethan played and repeat it perfectly. After a few tries, Ethan started bringing small surprises to keep her motivated. Little bells, an old music box, even a recorder that played lullabies. He'd say, "Every sound tells a story. You just have to listen hard enough." To Lily, he became more than a teacher. He was a friend, maybe even the first person outside her mother who treated her like she wasn't fragile. With him, she felt normal, not the blind girl, not the CEO's daughter, just Lily. What neither of them knew was that their secret lessons were slowly changing someone else too. Every time Victoria stood behind that door, she felt her walls crack just a little more. The world had taught her to be strong, to control everything, to never show weakness. But as she listened to the music of her daughter's laughter, she realized strength wasn't silence when it was connection. And though Ethan had no idea, the woman silently watching from the shadows was beginning to feel something she hadn't felt in years. Admiration. Not for his work, not for his position, but for his heart. It was the beginning of something neither of them expected. A bridge between worlds that were never meant to meet. The janitor and the CEO, both broken in their own ways, slowly being brought together by the courage of a little blind girl who just wanted to play piano. Victoria Hartman had always believed emotions were weaknesses dressed as feelings. She had built her life around control. Every decision calculated, every risk measured, every vulnerability hidden behind polished smiles and sharp words. To the world, she was power in heels, confidence in motion. But at home, in the silence between her and her daughter, that same control felt like a prison. Her empire was spotless, but her heart was messy. Every morning she left before sunrise, her driver waiting outside with the car already running. Every evening she came home long after Lily was asleep. She told herself she was doing it for her daughter, to secure a future where Lily would never struggle. But deep inside she knew she was also running from the guilt of not knowing how to love a child who couldn't see her face. Lily's blindness had been a wound she never healed from. When the doctors told her it was permanent, Victoria had stood still, expressionless. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply nodded and said, "Thank you, doctor," as if she were signing another business deal. But that night when she walked into the nursery and saw her baby sleeping peacefully, something inside her broke. Instead of holding her closer, she stepped back, afraid that if she did, her heart would never stop breaking. So she built walls, not just around herself, but around her life. The walls were made of work, meetings, deadlines, and reputation. They were safe, predictable, but they also kept her from hearing the simplest truth, that love doesn't need to be perfect to be felt. Then came the janitor. Victoria never planned to notice him. In her world, men like Ethan Cole were invisible, the kind of people who cleaned up after success, not the kind who shaped it. But every time she watched him with Lily, something in her started to shift. He was gentle where she was strict, patient where she was efficient, and warm where she was distant. He didn't treat Lily like a burden to manage or a problem to solve. He treated her like a child with a gift, a child worth listening to. At first, she had told herself it was nothing, just a man being kind. But kindness had a strange way of disarming her. One afternoon, she lingered longer than usual outside the music room. Through the glass window, she saw Ethan sitting beside Lily as they played a duet, a soft, flowing tune that made her heart ache. Lily's laughter echoed through the corridor, light and genuine. It was a sound Victoria hadn't heard in years, and it made her throat tighten. Inside, Ethan was saying something. "See? You did that all on your own. Told you the piano listens when you're brave," Lily giggled. "Then it must really like me today." Ethan smiled. "It loves you, but not as much as your teacher does." Victoria stepped back, heart racing. He meant himself, of course. Yet something about the tenderness in his tone felt personal. Not romantic, not then, but deeply human. It had been so long since she'd seen someone care without wanting something in return. That night, Victoria sat alone in her office, staring at the city skyline. For once, the view didn't comfort her. It felt cold, like the glass she stood behind every day. She thought about Lily's joy, Ethan's kindness, and her own silence. The truth hit her like a quiet storm. She didn't know her daughter anymore. The next day, she tried to talk to Lily during breakfast. "How's school?" she asked awkwardly. Lily smiled faintly. "It's good. The janitor's been teaching me piano." Victoria's spoon froze midway to her mouth. "The janitor?" Lily nodded. "He's really nice, Mom. You should hear him play." Victoria didn't know how to respond. Her first instinct was to stop it, to protect boundaries, to remind Lily that staff weren't teachers. But something stopped her. She saw the light in her daughter's face, the excitement in her voice. And for once, she didn't want to take that away. Instead, she just said softly, "That's good, sweetheart." After Lily left for school, Victoria sat in silence. The words "the janitor" kept echoing in her mind, not as judgment, but as realization. Maybe titles didn't matter as much as she thought. Maybe the people she overlooked were the ones who could teach her what all her money couldn't buy. Days turned into weeks. Victoria continued to watch from the shadows, always listening, never interrupting. But each time she stood there, the wall around her cracked a little more. She noticed the small things first. The way Ethan wiped dust from the piano before Lily arrived. The way he always waited for her to finish a phrase before speaking. The way he celebrated every small success with genuine pride. He didn't just teach her piano. He gave her confidence. And confidence was something Victoria herself had long lost. Not in boardrooms, but in life. One late evening, she stayed behind after everyone had gone. The school was quiet except for the faint hum of cleaning machines. She walked into the music room, her heels echoing on the floor. The piano sat there, bathed in soft moonlight. She touched it gently, her fingers tracing the same keys her daughter played. For a brief moment, she pressed a note, a simple, lonely sound that filled the air. She smiled sadly. It was out of tune, just slightly, but real. "I used to play once," she whispered to no one, before everything became about winning. Outside, the janitor's cart rolled past, wheels squeaking softly. For the first time, Victoria looked up, really looked. She didn't just see a janitor anymore. She saw a man who had given her daughter something she hadn't been able to, peace. And though she would never admit it aloud, she began to envy that peace. She went home that night thinking about what it would feel like to let someone in again, to stop being the cold, perfect CEO, and start being a mother who could simply sit beside her daughter and listen. In the quiet of her empty mansion, she poured a glass of water, not wine, and whispered to her reflection, "Maybe It's not too late. For the first time in years, the woman who had everything felt something rare, humility, and beneath that, the fragile spark of something even rarer, hope. The morning began like any other. Sunlight creeping through the school windows. The echo of footsteps, the smell of freshly cleaned hallways. But for Ethan Cole, that day would change everything. He was halfway through wiping down desks when the principal's voice came sharply from behind him. "Mr. Cole," said Mr. Kent, his tone flat and cold. "In my office now." Ethan froze, his heart thudding. He wiped his hands on his uniform and followed quietly. Inside the office, the principal sat behind his desk, his expression stiff with authority. Two other staff members stood nearby, the music teacher and the school administrator. The air felt heavy. "Mr. Cole," the principal began, folding his hands, "we've been informed that you've been spending time with one of our students, Miss Lily Hartman, outside your assigned duties." Ethan blinked. "Yes, sir, I was only helping her practice piano. That's not your job," Mr. Kent interrupted sharply. "You are a janitor. You are not authorized to interact with students in that capacity." Ethan swallowed. "I understand, sir. But she asked me to help her. She wanted to learn, and I—" "This isn't about your intentions," the principal cut in. "It's about boundaries, liability, and reputation. We cannot have non-teaching staff conducting private sessions with students, especially someone of Lily Hartman's background." The mention of her name made Ethan's stomach twist. He knew what it meant, the CEO's daughter. In their world, a janitor helping a rich blind girl was not seen as kindness. It was seen as stepping out of place. "I'm sorry," Ethan said softly. "I didn't mean any harm. I was just trying to help her feel—" "Enough," the principal said, raising a hand. "Your contract ends today. You'll collect your final payment from the accounts office before leaving." For a long moment, Ethan stood frozen. The words felt unreal. Lose his job? For helping a child? For caring? He tried to protest, but the principal's face was made of stone. "This decision is final." Ethan nodded slowly, the weight of defeat pressing down on him. "Understood." He walked out quietly, head low, ignoring the curious glances from passing teachers. The mop handle still leaned against the wall in the hallway, a reminder of his simple, honest work. But now even that felt distant. Meanwhile, Lily waited in the music room, tapping her fingers impatiently on the keys. "Mr. Ethan?" she called softly. No answer. She tried again. "Are you there?" The silence answered for him. When she asked around, no one told her the truth. "He's busy," one teacher said. He had to take a few days off. But Lily knew something was wrong. The next day and the next after that, he still didn't come. The music room felt emptier than ever. At home, she stopped playing altogether. When her mother asked why, she simply said, "Because the music left." Victoria noticed the change immediately. The laughter that had filled her daughter's voice vanished. The spark she had secretly admired disappeared. One evening, after seeing Lily quietly sitting by the piano at home with her hands still, Victoria finally asked, "Lily, what happened?" Tears welled up behind Lily's blindfold. "They sent him away, Mom, Mr. Ethan. They fired him." Victoria's heart clenched. "Who told you that?" "One of the students overheard the teachers talking," Lily whispered. "They said he wasn't supposed to teach me because he's just a janitor." "But he's not just a janitor, Mom. He's kind. He made me believe I could do things even if I can't see." Victoria stared at her daughter in silence, her throat tight. Each word Lily spoke felt like a knife. For years, she had thought power could fix everything, that influence and money could buy happiness. But here was her daughter, broken not by blindness but by loss, the loss of kindness, of connection. That night, Victoria couldn't sleep. She paced through her enormous quiet house, haunted by the memory of Lily's laughter and the man who had brought it back. When morning came, she made a decision she hadn't made in years, one that came not from logic but from her heart. She canceled her meetings, ignored her assistant's calls, and drove to the school herself. Mr. Kent was surprised to see her. "Mrs. Hartman? What an honor. To what do we owe the pleasure?" She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I came to ask about Ethan Cole." The principal cleared his throat. "Ah, yes. The janitor. I assure you, Mrs. Hartman, the situation was handled appropriately. It was improper for him to—" "Improper," she interrupted sharply. "You call kindness improper?" The principal blinked, caught off guard. Victoria stepped closer, her voice low but fierce. That man did what none of your teachers could. He gave my daughter confidence. He made her happy. And you punished him for it. Mrs. Hartman, he stammered, I understand your feelings, but we have rules. Then your rules are wrong, she said coldly. Reinstate him. He hesitated, unsure how to respond. Victoria's gaze hardened. Or I'll personally ensure this school's board reviews every policy you've ever written. That did it. The principal's face paled. Of course, Mrs. Hartman. I'll see to it immediately. When she left the office, the secretaries and teachers stared, whispering. But she didn't care. For once, she wasn't the cold CEO fighting for her company. She was a mother fighting for her daughter's joy. Later that evening, Victoria drove across town, following the address she had found in the school's files. She stopped in front of a small, worn apartment building. Inside, Ethan was sitting at his kitchen table, a stack of unpaid bills beside him, his son reading quietly in the corner. When he heard a knock, he opened the door and froze. Standing there, elegant but strangely vulnerable, was Victoria Hartman. Mrs. Hartman? He said, startled. Is something wrong with Lily? She shook her head. No, Mr. Cole, everything's wrong without you. He didn't understand at first. Ma'am, she took a slow breath. You gave my daughter something I couldn't, courage, and I owe you more than I can ever repay. He looked down, unsure what to say. I never wanted anything from her. I just wanted her to feel the music. Victoria smiled faintly. A small, real smile, the kind that surprised even her. Then come back. Not as a janitor. As her piano tutor. Officially, I'll handle everything. Ethan's eyes widened. I don't know what to say. Say yes, she said softly. For Lily, behind her calm tone, there was something new. Gratitude, humility, and a hint of warmth she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. For the first time, Ethan saw not the untouchable CEO everyone feared, but a mother trying, awkwardly, to make things right. And in that quiet moment at the door, two very different worlds began to meet. Not through power or charity, but through the shared love of one little girl who had taught them both how to see. Ethan stood there for a long moment, frozen in disbelief. He had imagined 100 ways his story at Crestwood Academy could end. None of them included the CEO of one of the biggest companies in the city standing outside his tiny apartment. With tears in her eyes, he glanced back at Noah, who was peeking curiously from the doorway. The boy's wide eyes darted between his father and the well-dressed woman holding her purse awkwardly, as if unsure what to do with her hands. Dad, Noah whispered. Is that her mom? Ethan nodded slightly. Yeah, son, that's her mom. Victoria smiled faintly, a little embarrassed by how out of place she felt in that narrow hallway. She wasn't used to small spaces, to peeling paint or flickering light bulbs, yet there was something honest about this place, and it smelled like home, like effort, like love. May I come in? She asked. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Of course. Sorry, it's not much. She stepped inside, looking around quietly. The furniture was old but clean. The walls were covered with drawings, clearly Noah's handiwork, and one framed photograph of Ethan's late wife smiling warmly. For a moment, Victoria felt something she hadn't felt in years. Humility. Ethan motioned for her to sit at the small dining table. She did, placing her leather bag carefully beside her chair. I'm not sure what to say, she admitted. I'm not very good at this, he smiled gently. Neither am I, ma'am. They both laughed softly, a strange, shared awkwardness breaking the tension. After a pause, she said quietly, Lily hasn't played the piano since you left. Ethan looked down at his hands, rough and tired from years of work. She was getting really good, he said softly. Better than she knew, Victoria nodded. I know, I heard her play. I used to stand outside the door. That surprised him. You did? Yes, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I used to watch both of you. I thought I was doing it for her safety. But the truth is, I was watching because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. A man who had nothing to gain from helping her, giving her the one thing she needed most. Ethan's brow furrowed. What's that? Joy, she said simply. The word hung in the air like a song that didn't need music. She continued, You made my daughter believe she could do things even in darkness. That's something I, with all my wealth and power, couldn't do, and for that, I owe you more than I can repay. Ethan shook his head slowly. You don't owe me anything. She gave me something too. I didn't realize how much I'd missed teaching, sharing music, just seeing someone find light again. It reminded me why I keep going. Victoria's eyes softened. Then maybe you should keep doing it. For both of you, he hesitated. You really want me to come back? After everything? I do, she said. Not as staff, as family. The words caught him off guard. He opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Victoria quickly continued. I'll arrange for your official position as Lily's private tutor. You'll be compensated fairly. You'll have freedom to teach her however you think best. No rules, no interference. Teach her however you think best. No rules, no interference. Ethan looked away, his voice quiet. I don't care about money, Mrs. Hartman. I just want her to find her music again. Victoria smiled. A small, tired, but genuine smile. Then we want the same thing. From the other room, Noah coughed gently. Dad, he whispered, can I ask something? Ethan turned. Yeah, buddy? Will I get to meet the girl who plays the piano? Victoria laughed softly, the sound surprising even her. I think she'd like that, she said warmly. It was the first time laughter had filled Ethan's apartment in years. Gentle, real and healing. The next morning, Ethan walked back into Crestwood Academy for the first time since his dismissal. The janitor's uniform he once wore had been replaced by a clean shirt and the school's official tutor badge pinned to his chest. Some of the staff looked shocked, others confused, but Ethan ignored the whispers. He was there for one reason. When he entered the music room, Lily was already there, sitting quietly at the piano. She turned her head at the sound of his footsteps, her face lighting up instantly. Mr. Ethan, he smiled. You didn't think I'd stay gone forever, did you? Her mouth opened in surprise before turning into the biggest grin. They told me you weren't coming back. Well, he said with a chuckle, they were wrong. Lily stood and reached out her hands until she found his. You came back, she whispered. You really came back? He squeezed her small hands gently. I promised I'd teach you until that piano learned your name. She laughed, a sound so full of joy that even the echoing room seemed to smile. From outside, unnoticed by both of them, Victoria stood once again behind the doorway. But this time she wasn't hiding. She wasn't observing with guilt or hesitation. She was simply watching with pride, her heart full, her eyes soft. As she listened to Lily's fingers dance across the keys again, she felt something she hadn't felt in decades. Peace. It was strange and quiet and real. For the first time, Victoria didn't feel the need to control anything. The music didn't belong to her, nor did the moment. It was theirs, Ethan's and Lily's, and she was just grateful to be a part of it. When the melody ended, she stepped into the room. Both Ethan and Lily turned toward her. That was beautiful, she said softly. Lily smiled. You were listening again? Victoria nodded, moving closer. Yes, but this time I'm not outside the door. Ethan looked at her, and for a fleeting second their eyes met. Two people from different worlds, connected by the same fragile thing, love for the same child. Lily reached out her hand, catching both of theirs. Now we can all listen together, she said simply. And for the first time in their lives, they did. The music that followed was more than just notes. It was laughter, forgiveness, and gratitude woven into sound, a bridge between pain and peace. Ethan played softly, guiding Lily's hands, while Victoria sat beside them, her fingers tapping the rhythm she once feared to feel. 3 lives, once separated by pride, grief, and silence, now shared one song, a melody that spoke without words. And though none of them said it aloud, they all knew this wasn't the end of something broken. It was the beginning of something beautiful. The night of Lily's first piano recital arrived with the soft hum of excitement in the air. The auditorium at Crestwood Academy glowed with warm light, filled with parents, students, and teachers. Elegant banners lined the walls, and in the front row sat 2 people who could not have looked more different. Victoria Hartman in her polished black dress, graceful and composed, and Ethan Cole in a simple suit that looked borrowed but pressed with care. Beside him, Noah fidgeted nervously, clutching a small bouquet of flowers for Lily. Victoria glanced at Ethan, her expression calm but tender. She's been practicing for weeks, she said softly. She wanted this so badly. Ethan nodded, smiling.
She'll be fine.
She's got more courage than most grown-ups I know. They both fell silent as the lights dimmed. The stage curtain rose slowly, revealing a grand piano at its center. Lily walked onto the stage with measured steps, her hand gently touching the edge of the piano to guide her. The audience grew quiet, the kind of silence that holds its breath for something special. Wearing a simple white dress, Lily looked like she was standing in a pool of light. She took a deep breath and placed her hands on the keys. Then for a moment she paused, as if listening to something only she could hear. In the front row, Ethan leaned forward, whispering under his breath, "You got this, kid." Then the music began. It started soft, hesitant at first, then grew into something strong and full of life. Each note carried the story of her journey, the fear she once had, the laughter she found, the kindness that healed her, and the love that guided her fingers. The melody rose and fell like a heartbeat, and soon the entire room was wrapped in sound, raw, real, and beautiful. Ethan closed his eyes. He could feel the music deep inside, every rise and pause a reflection of something he had once lost and found again. Beside him, Victoria's hands trembled slightly in her lap. For the first time in her life, she wasn't thinking about success or failure. She was simply feeling, and it overwhelmed her in the best possible way. When Lily reached the final note, she let it linger, a soft, golden sound that seemed to float through the room long after her fingers lifted. Then there was silence, and in that silence, everyone felt something change. Then came the applause. Thunderous, heartfelt, endless. Lily stood slowly, smiling shyly, bowing toward the sound of the clapping hands. She didn't need to see the crowd to know what their faces looked like. She could feel their joy. From the front row, Ethan and Noah stood, clapping the loudest. Victoria rose too, her eyes glistening. When Lily turned her head toward the sound of her mother's voice calling her name, she smiled wider. "Mom," she said softly, "did I do okay?" Victoria stepped closer to the stage, her voice breaking just a little. "You did more than okay, sweetheart. You were amazing." After the recital, when most of the audience had gone, Lily stayed back in the empty hall with Ethan and Victoria. The three of them stood near the piano, bathed in the soft afterglow of the stage lights. "That was something special," Ethan said, his eyes warm with pride. "You played from your heart, just like I told you." Lily smiled. "You said the piano listens when you're brave. I think it heard me tonight." "It did," Victoria whispered. "And so did everyone else." She knelt beside her daughter, touching her cheek gently. "You've taught me something, Lily. You showed me that strength isn't about control, it's about love." Lily reached out, her hand brushing her mother's face. "I'm glad you came inside the room this time." Victoria smiled through her tears. "I'll never stand outside again." Ethan watched quietly, a lump forming in his throat. For the first time, he saw a softness in Victoria that matched the kindness Lily had always carried. He didn't see a CEO anymore. He saw a mother, a real one. When they finally walked out into the cool evening air, the stars shimmered above like a silent audience still clapping. Noah ran ahead laughing. Lily walked between Ethan and Victoria, holding one hand of each. They walked without talking. Yet the silence between them was full, filled with gratitude, forgiveness, and a quiet understanding that sometimes life brings people together not by chance, but by need. At the school gates, Victoria turned to Ethan. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything, for saving my daughter's heart, and maybe mine too." Ethan shook his head, smiling modestly. "I didn't save anyone. I just listened." She looked at him with a kind of respect she rarely gave anyone. "Then the world needs more people who listen." Lily tugged on both their hands. "Can we go get ice cream now?" They laughed, and for a moment, the three of them, the janitor, the CEO, and the little blind girl who played like an angel, felt like a family. As they walked into the night, the sound of their laughter carried softly through the quiet streets, mixing with the echo of music still alive in their hearts. Because that's what true healing sounds like. Not applause, not perfection, but three souls learning finally to play the same song together. And though their lives would continue to change, one truth would remain. Sometimes the most extraordinary miracles begin with the simplest kindness on a janitor, a piano, and a little girl who taught everyone how to see without eyes, and how to love without fear. Eyes, and how to love without fear.